Hey everyone, let's wrap up January. As usual, we'll start with the videos. And in January, I uploaded quite a few. We started off the year with my reading stats for 2020 and some reading goals for 2021. And you will notice that one of my main goals is finishing series, and that highly influenced my reading this month. But more about that later. I thank you all for talking about your goals and your achievements in 2020 and all of the reading stats that we enjoy so much. In January, I also always upload my anniversary video. One Book, One Review is 10 years old now, and I decided to make some channel goals, I think for the first time in my channel's history. Which is basically I give up on my schedule and I try to make more separate reviews again. I've slacked on that quite a lot. Another staple video in January for me is my self-image. That is where I look at where I stand and how I see myself at that moment. It's a moment capture. It's nothing that is fixed. It changes all the time, but it's just something that stands out about myself at that time. And I thank you all very much for how you received this year's video and the comments you left. Thank you very much. And that already brings us to the books. Let's start with the physical ones I read. So let's start with Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This was a reread for me. I studied it in university and I didn't like it in university. Over the years, I have built a relationship with the story and with the book that I quite enjoy. And I made a video about that. I was just thinking about if I should tell you what Pride and Prejudice is about, but I find it hard to summarize without going into details. Does that happen to anyone else if you're so familiar with a story that you've lost any ability to talk about it in a broader sense? I just want to say it's about a family of girls needing to find husbands and rich neighbors. That sounds so unattractive to read. I'm gonna stop talking about Pride and Prejudice now. Another book I uploaded a video for, which is not quite a review, is The Iron Jackal. This is the third book in the Catty J series, and if you followed me around anywhere or watched the video, you know that I had a frustrating reading experience with the book. This being a third book in a series, it's hard to talk about content, but it's more or less an adventure book where you jump from one action scene to the next action scene. And I do enjoy that kind of book. And I do enjoy Chris Wooding's writing, but I don't think those two fit well together. It's somehow weird because I like the characters. I like what Chris Wooding is doing with his writing and with this story. But in this book particularly, it is very, very annoying and made it hard to read. And I was very grateful for people mentioning that this was their least favorite book in the series. That helped. After slugging my way through The Iron Jackal, I wanted to read something short and quick. And I found that I owned a copy of The Judge and His Hangman. I think that's the English title. I read it in German and I didn't know what I was getting into. This edition is part of a must-read classics series by the Süddeutsche Zeitung. And I bought quite a few of those books. There are a lot that I don't care about, but some that I was curious about. And this book being one of them. And I started the book, I opened it and it says crime novel. And I'm like, why do I have a mystery novel? I don't read crime fiction. And yeah, I read it in a day. It was very fast. It's very short. It's a little bit over 100 pages. And since I read it in German, that usually goes a little bit faster and I couldn't sleep that night. No one cares about that. This is basically the story of a murdered policeman being discovered and another policeman having to figure out who the murderer was, which sounds pretty simple, but there are quite a few twists and turns which turns it into the story of an epic long life battle between two enemies, and how the situation dissolves is quite interesting. Some of the things I knew pretty fast in advance, but other things I was very well pleased to be surprised by. I don't read much mystery because I am hard to surprise by mystery books. But I can recommend this if you've ever been interested. I really enjoyed the read. Those were all the physical books I read. I reviewed another book that I listened to on audio, which is One Native Life by Richard Wagamese. This is Richard Wagamese's memoir, or rather stories about his life. It's very short snippets and essays where he tells you things that he remembers about his life. What I really liked about the presentation of each of those events and memories was that they were put into perspective to things that he later found out and things that he didn't know back then, especially when it comes to his childhood, where his experiences with being displaced and being adopted and how his life was apart from his family and his tribe, and what that did to him and how it affected him in his life afterwards. I found that very interesting because it showed that sometimes there are things that you don't understand at the time that they're happening, but when you look back on them, you look at them with a different perspective and different knowledge. And this was very well done, and I really, really enjoyed this. I listened to one other nonfiction book in January. Desintegriert, euch is a German book about the position of Jews in Germany. I'm probably summing this up badly, but this book looks at how we deal with Jews in Germany and the situation and the memory and everything and the political atmosphere at the moment here, what people want to talk about, how people talk about things, and all of that from a Jewish perspective. And that was what I found most interesting. So the things that were addressed in the book, the vocabulary, the events, and the ongoing things, and the way we deal with our past as Germans is not unfamiliar to me. It's something that's been part of my life all my life. I was born in the 70s in the Cold War, so it's present. But what I couldn't do, or what I've never heard of or thought of about, is how this looks from the Jewish perspective, how the same vocabulary affects them, how the same events affects or feel from a Jewish perspective. And this book really pointed that out, how the things that I either didn't even think about further or just accepted, or that were part of what I thought was a good thing, maybe wasn't so good, or where things could have been handled better. And I thought that was very, very interesting and very important, because sometimes you can't see something if you're not in the correct point of view to look at it. And since I'm not Jewish, I couldn't look at things from that perspective. And I'm not in the Jewish hip multiculti community in Berlin, where the author currently lives and works. So I don't have access to that either. And I think that is something that this book really helped me with, even though a lot of it was a little bit over my head. And I was like, I think I need to reread this at some point. Feeling stupid these days. Anyways, this book gave me access to something that I couldn't access any other way. And I think it's important to access these perspectives, to look at how we want to continue and go further, especially with the rise of right populism. Let's not go further into this. I highly recommend, if you are German and if you have access to this, check it out, read it, see how it makes you feel, what you think about it. Maybe you don't like it, but it was a 5-hour audiobook. It was very accessible and I enjoyed it. It definitely taught me something. The last 2 audiobooks were sequels. I listened to the 8th book in the Dresden Files, Proven Guilty, and I highly enjoyed this. In recent books, I felt wary of the trope of the way the stories are told. They all follow the same rhythm, the same style, the same build-up. And Dresden was starting to get on my nerves with his chauvinism and his same faults and flaws. But in this one, he wasn't his usual stupid self. There were a lot of things that I really enjoyed about the book. The organization of the story is similar to what we had before, but this one had a lot of plot twists and a lot of unexpected things happening, which I enjoyed. There were a lot of good character interactions and things that we've been sitting on for books, where I thought we finally need to address this, and it happened. So I really enjoyed listening to it, and it wasn't like in the last book that I read where I needed a year of a break. So that's positive, and I'm actually looking forward to the next book and hope to get to it sooner than in a year. The last book I listened to was the third book in the Sherlock Holmes series, and even though I enjoy it, I have no memory of it. The Sherlock Holmes series is a play on Sherlock Holmes, and we have Sherlock being a warlock and a little bit stupid. We have Holmes being doctor and not magic, and being the clever one. He's the one who deducts all the time and uses his clever mind to fix and solve problems, whereas Holmes tends to use magic, which is slowly bringing on the apocalypse. That's the whole premise of the series. And I do enjoy it. It's so much fun to listen to. The narration is very well done. It's highly enjoyable. The stories are whimsical and fun, and they are well thought through, but they're short-lived. I don't think that's bad. Nothing has to stay with you forever. These books are exactly what I need this time, where you just want to dive into a story, have fun, be entertained, and not have to think about it too much afterwards and analyze it. It's an enjoyable entertainment, and that's something that is good in a book. And that was my January. Like I mentioned before, I don't want to go into too much detail about plot for sequels, which will happen a lot this year as I'm planning to read a lot more sequels. Well, wrap-ups are gonna be fun. Anyways, let me know in comments if you have read any of those books, if you've heard of them, if you want to read them, if you're maybe stuck in series 2 and how you're dealing with that. Let's talk in comments. Thank you all for watching.